Hey there, and welcome to another video by Tiny Mushroom, and in this one we're going to be discussing whether the theoretical bubble that surrounds the comic book movie universe is going to burst anytime soon with the sheer amount of movies that have been released and with the relatively samey nature that we have of them. So I'm talking about the Marvel formula, so to speak.
Yeah, more so rather than any other time. I think we've started to notice that comic book films are becoming more apparent. I don't know if you've seen that really entertaining infographic showing the logos of each comic book film.
I haven't.
You really haven't? Oh, it's brilliant. It shows you the logo for when each comic book film's coming out, and
Okay.
I think up to around 2010 or 2011, there's at least 2 films coming out every year.
Wow.
And it only gets more and more ridiculous now.
I was going to say there's about 6 this year.
Really?
It's nuts. Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about, how long can this business model maintain? Because, say, unlike a few years ago when you'd say get Hulk, Ang Lee's Hulk, or an X-Men film like every couple of years or so.
More than that as well, I think.
Yeah, now with several different series, like you've got the Marvel Studios line, 20th Century Fox line, releasing multiple films in so many years, reaching a point now where we're getting them so often. I feel like there's always going to be a bit of a lack of interest, and that the bubble's going to burst, and people might lose interest. So
it's inevitable that the bubble will burst. It's just a matter of when and why. And a big question for me comes during Marvel's eventual Phase 4, after I think it's 2018, 2019.
About then, yeah.
And essentially, because they're such big players in this market, the role that they take, so whether they continue the huge 10-year arcing story on again and they develop new characters in that they've done like they've done before, or if they just do the older model where they just put like individual films on in their own space and just release those as they are in their own separate universes. I think the decision that they make on that will have a big impact.
Definitely.
And of course the heroes and stories that they choose, because of course there are still like incredible heroes and villains to choose. There are still amazing stories to put on the big screen. It's just whether they can dig them out and eventually adapt them to what we want to see at the cinema.
Yeah, definitely, because like the backlog of superheroes they've got is huge. I'd love to see a Century film personally.
Like, based on the backlog, you could go for millennia. It's stupid.
It is ridiculous, and they've already shown they can get some characters which no one cares about successfully. I would.
You dare say Thor? You dare?
Guardians.
Okay.
Guardians acceptable, but I'd much rather prefer it to be that once we've got this satisfaction of the Thanos arc, and once we've got the Infinity War done with, I'd much rather prefer it to be a individual basis, such as how Hulk, once again bringing up that terrible film, but just how Ang Lee's Hulk just stood on its own. Or the first
fell over.
Yeah, took a step and fell right on its face. Or how the first X-Men could have stood on its own and just had its own line of sequels, and that was it. Or the Spider-Man trilogy, the first Spider-Man, just individual, characterized on its own. And because now that we're reaching the point where they're coming out every so on, a lot of them do feel the same. If you genuinely go back and you watch the first Spider-Man film in the Sam Raimi trilogy, the first X-Men, they're really different. They're very different in tone.
So you'd rather see Marvel Studios, for example, go with individual characters and then give like creative control to individual people within those, so one person within each one of those sort of subgenres?
Good, yeah, I'd definitely say that, because another thing that's constraining that model, the model we got at the moment, is that you have to have certain films released within a certain time frame so people don't forget.
Yeah.
So you need,
That's it, because there's so many. It just creates its own sort of like effect of having to go faster and faster and faster, because Marvel release more, and therefore they're remembered considerably more than DC. Then DC will release more, and then Marvel are going, well, you're taking up the markets, then we got to release more, and it just gets out of control like it has this year, where we just got stupid amounts.
Yeah, and I know that I'd personally like to see these characters. Say more so in their first films that we had earlier in like the turn of the decade, where they weren't encumbered by all the extra fluff surrounding them, when you could enjoy the Captain America First Avenger and that's it.
Yeah, like Iron Man 2 is a perfect example in that it wasn't an Iron Man film necessarily, it was a setup for the Avengers film.
Pretty much.
And that suffered from the direction that they're going with trying to set up this big event. And essentially, that when we look back on all these superhero films, when the bubble has burst, that's going to be forgotten because of that reason.
And that whatever direction Marvel chooses to take once Phase 3 has been finished, full well that 20th Century Fox and Sony will follow up, because the Amazing Spider-Man series didn't do well, but you knew they were setting up for a Sinister Six film anyway, and you knew they were going to go along that lines. They were just concerned about setting up a universe more than the individual characteristics. The only ones who quite get away with that now are Fox, ironically. But this sort of idea of having to rush films out, felt like they had a really good idea going with X-Men First Class and rebooting the entire series and starting off with a bunch of new actors and a fairly low budget. Felt fine, but once they had to catch up with Marvel, it's like, let's bring in the old actors for Days of Future Past, and that turned out good.
Mind you, they're really lucky in that there's a lot of good X-Men story arcs that they can go off, whereas in sort of maybe Sony having sold Spider-Man now, they have less of a backlog of comic books to go off of to get those really good stories in.
Yeah, we'll never get that Spider-Man Deadpool film, unfortunately.
Well, who knows?
I think one of the better examples of these films being really, really rushed down coming out is actually Deadpool, because it took the piss out of the traditional comic tropes, but it was low budget. It was more or less completely independent as well, and it was incredibly. Well, it still played relative to the tropes of comic films, but it was quite stylized and it had its own unique characteristic. It felt more like the films we used to get around the 2000s and such.
That did a really interesting thing in that it created its own sort of recent subgenre in like the R-rated adult comedy,
which we're seeing with probably a few more films coming out soon.
In a year or so, it's going to get really stale, ironically, with the success that Deadpool had. And the natural progression, I think, for that is from the anti-villain films is to go for full villain films, like you mentioned with the Sinister Six. That will happen eventually, and then eventually that will get stale. And there's only so many times you can reinvent these subgenres, and that's another reason why I think it will fail. Not only because of what Marvel will do, but because there's just so many. There's only so many film genres you can plow through before you retread on your own steps.
Yeah, I do think as well that I do really hope that Marvel doesn't go along the route of here's Phase 4, and we're going to be Galactus, because the initial Phase 1 succeeded just on the merit of the films alone, rather than going into Phase 2. It's like, okay, here's the characters again, and Phase 3, we're gearing up for something even big now with the Infinity Gems.
Ready?
Yeah, this is the point of the roller coaster where it's like you can see the top bit and you're like, oh, here we go.
Well, it's only down from there.
Literally, yeah. But trying to start all that back up again, I don't think it'll be as good, because at that point you'll have probably got, say, 8 films with Iron Man in, and so with Captain America in, and people are going to get tired of that. I feel like Fox is closing off Wolverine on a good note, because he's been like how many films now? Like
he's in every X-Men film. It's just crazy. Like even with Days of Future Past, that's supposed to be Kitty Pryde who goes back in time, but because they had the confidence and the obvious success with Wolverine, even in the bad Wolverine films, they put him in that role rather than taking this. I think it's a fairly small risk of putting Kitty Pryde in that main role. Yeah. So even that was sort of created by the pressure that other studios put on Fox to make a film a success, because you just can't have a dud film at the moment. Shown what DC have done.
You can't miss a beat in this market now, where every film's got to be at least make its money back, and DC can now successfully say, yes, Suicide Squad made its money back, that's fine. Move on to the next one.
Which is
there's no time for reflection. There's no real time for feedback. There's no time to digest anything. And I think the real crux of this argument is, because we're in this time of like, move on. They're getting more stale. We're noticing the tropes a lot quicker, and definitely. I feel like we used to look back and we'd be like, oh, when's this film coming out? Release dates sneak up on me a lot more now.
Essentially, what's happened is, because they're so that you know what to expect, the amount of memes that you get per film has increased.
Fucking hold on a second here. Are you legitimately bringing in meme density into this argument?
The meme density per film has increased since the original X-Men. And so this is how we know the films are getting stale, because people know what to expect.
I refuse to believe that the quality of these films and the market is going to be better. I doubt that some executive
it's science. The science says.
Look, Kevin Feige is not looking at in his office, fucking looking at dank memes to be like, oh wow, Doctor Strange did brilliantly.
How do you know? Exactly. It's about the memes. You know.
Jesus Christ. Anyway, yeah, because
anyway, that was vital information. Move on from that.
I only realised that Logan was coming out in a couple of weeks' time just because I was like, oh hell, I'm not even keeping track of these films anymore.
We've already had 2 this year, so I've written down not necessarily all of them, but the diverse films that we've got this year. So I've written down ones that occupy their own subgenres. So we've got Logan, your R-rated, hopefully gritty film. We don't know yet, but hopefully. Lego Batman, your sort of kiddie comedy.
Yeah.
Guardians of the Galaxy, just generally comedy superhero film. JLA, shit. Thor, which is just going to be amazing. What?
I did that to get a reaction out of you. It'll be alright.
It's going to be amazing.
It'll be alright. Okay, it'll be amazing then.
Thank you. Yeah, so anyway, they occupy all their own subgenres, but there's still just a ridiculous amount coming out this year. So, at the moment, I don't mind because some of these genres are in their infancy, so it's not stale yet. But there's going to come an issue where diversity won't make up for the increase in frequency, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, because at a certain point, you'll be able to, I don't think that a market which does mass-produced films at the rate it's going at now can have diversity, because there's just not enough time.
And the diversity is only within subgenres. It's not true diversity in a way.
Yeah, it's
They're still superhero films.
Yeah, it still fits under the superhero umbrella, but you say got like a more child-friendly film like Lego, but then you can have say like a Dark Knight on this end.
Exactly,
it still fits under that umbrella of there's going to be an arc, there's going to be a superhero and a villain, there's going to be interest, so on and so forth.
Another thing that's helping is the TV shows, because they're most of the time 18, especially the Marvel films, they're like 18 plus things. DC a bit less, but that occupies a different sort of space where it's a bit more colourful and comedic in that sense. Just those being able to explore the characters rather than the superhero themselves, that's a nice break from what you get with the film things, because you actually get a good 13 hours or so of actual content where you can explore these characters fully. So one of the things that I saw when I was looking through the list of films that we've recently had is that Batman, the Dark Knight trilogy, really stands out in that it's just a really good film, just in like an Oscar sense. You know, it wouldn't be out of place on that list. Whereas with a lot of the other films that we have, none of them belong on that list. And if we actually had more sort of just genuinely quality superhero films, I think that would elongate the amount of time that the bubble would survive for just considerably, because that not only builds confidence with us who are obviously going to see these films, but with the general public.
I'd argue more so that they were given such ridiculous, praise like by the Oscar committees and so on, because they're so stylized and because they were so, very, very different from anything at the time. But that's more so due to style and just craft of filmmaking, which is unfortunately lost because they earned the right to be not niche, but they earned the right to be different, and that difference, benefited them in the long term.
They were quite lucky in a sense that the ones preceding that were like the Tim Burton-esque ones, which had, like you say, like an amazingly concentrated style. The obvious evolution for Christopher Nolan was to then make this really gritty, stylized version of what they attempted in the 90s. So let's hope that this day never comes, but when, or at least is like a long way off, but what would make you not want to see a superhero film?
I think just having the characters be for too long. I know it's a bit of a personal gripe, but I want to see them kill off like a major character soon. Because I'll just draw like one other mammoth comparison to a film franchise, like the Harry Potter franchise. That went on for the exact amount of time it could have. I know it's obviously based on different source materials, so I'm going to take that into liberty. But that lasted from when we were just about turning teenagers to late teenagers. Lasted as long as it needed to. And it told a complete story, and it did that fairly well. And there was just enough of a gap, and they used enough of the set pieces and enough of existing characters and so on and so forth to do it just fine. As
a comparison to that, I just want to briefly mention that the new Tom Holland Spider-Man franchise, they're looking to emulate Harry Potter with that. So to go through the high school years, So if you think of Harry Potter as its own entity,
Yeah.
and within Marvel, they're trying to fit a whole Harry Potter in there. That's how ridiculous it's got.
So he's going to be having a film for each year he's in. So
That's as far as I know, that's the plan. But
Yeah.
obviously that depends on a lot of other things.
yeah, that's the thing. I'm sick and tired of all these characters being dragged out for as long as they need to be. I mean, I'm going to sound like an absolute, idiot when I say this, but is Iron Man needed in a Spider-Man
Yeah.
film?
I know what you mean. Yeah.
It's good that he is, but
But it's
Yeah.
it's only to get that whoa reaction, isn't it? It's not like it improves the film.
it's
vastly.
more of a gimmick.
Yeah.
Because since, there's been 5 Spider-Man films before this, how are we going to make ours stick out? Oh,
Yeah.
we've got Iron Man. Problem solved.
Exactly. Regardless of whether you've got different directors, different producers, different actors, it's still Spider-Man. So it sounds like you're almost there. You're almost at the stage where you would miss a superhero film, especially with the sheer amount that are coming out, based on the fact that you know what's coming, and it's
Yeah.
essentially getting a bit stale.
It feels like, to me, if it got any faster, I would give up. At the moment, there's still ones coming out every couple of months, and there's so much I'm just flat out not going to care about.
There's also a point in time, especially coming into next year and the year after, where there's also an increase in just general summer blockbusters. So I looked on the internet. I know, it's scary, and I survived.
Did you have adult permission to do that?
No. So I looked on the internet, and there's an interesting conundrum that Pacific Rim 2 and Black Panther have, in that they come out 1 week before one another, or after one another. And so essentially Black Panther will have 1 week to make as much as they can before the next blockbuster comes out. And then Black Panther essentially will slowly die from that. And so it's not going to make as much money, therefore it's not going to build as much confidence. And so you've not only got an issue with superhero films, you've got an issue with just general blockbuster films getting in the way of each other.
Yeah. It's a shame when it gets to that point, because then you find, Marvel rubbing shoulders with, all Marvel Studios and Fox and so on.
And they've
everyone.
literally got a week or 2 weeks to make their money and get out of there.
We're at a point where the general public is starting to notice, and I feel like once the general public notice, the executives are already 2 steps ahead of us, and they're trying to compensate to that.
Yeah, we're definitely at a crux at the moment. We know that the bubble will burst. It's just a matter of when and what will cause it, which is just a really interesting thing to watch in the future.
Mm-hmm. So if I had to put my own guess and say when's it going to stop? When are we going to get sick and tired, or when the superhero films are going to go the way of cowboy films, where that's it? It was a thing that happened. I'm going to say within the next 10 years.
Oh yeah, that's easy. Definitely.
Within the next 10 years, because
I think it'll even decline at when Phase 4 comes out.
Yeah, let's say I'm saying it will be done by phase 10.
Yeah.
Like that's it. We're moving on to something else now.
So thanks for watching a kind of fuzzy video trying to work out about the comic bubble and when it will burst. Hopefully we've hit on some of the big talking points, and I'm sure you've got lots of points to discuss as well, and we'd love to hear your comments in the box below. So thanks for watching, and if you want to like and subscribe, that really helps us. So we'll see you guys next time.
See ya.